Hello everybody and welcome to the No Waffle GCSE English Language Live. It's so lovely to see so many of you here. I hope your geography exam, for those of you who did that, went well. Just bear with me for a second as I'm trying to stream on TikTok as well and getting that ready. It was easy. I'm seeing in the chat. That's amazing. So I don't know if there were any other GCSE exams. I'm just aware of the geography one since I made a live about that. But if anybody had any other exams, I hope they went well as well. Hello, everybody. Hello, Chidima. Hello, Logan. Hello, all of the mods and also everybody else. Sorry, TikTok is taking a bit of time to load. The direction map man facing question came up. I'm so sorry for you. I hope you're able to do it better than I was. Yes, so this is, you can see the plan on the screen here on the Google Doc, hopefully. You can see that. That's the plan for today's live in terms of what we're going to be doing. My laptop just decided to shut down for no reason. Bear with me. You can see as I said, you can see the outline for today's live on the screen. We'll be going through top mark exemplars and I will be doing them live with you to show that I'm doing it in live. I'm answering the question just to show how, in a time pressured environment, how you can write a good response. Hello, everybody who's just joining. Okay, I'm going to just try and sort my TikTok out because we're also going to be live streaming on that as well. Yeah, we'll be doing a question 5 exemplar as well. But obviously there's not a key structure because you could be asked about multiple different things. So This board is going to be specifically for answering the AQA questions. However, it's also applicable to Edexcel. Most of the videos on my channel are AQA but are applicable for Edexcel. That's kind of how they tend to be. And by the way, we hit 11K subscribers, which is amazing. Thank you everybody for doing that. It says question 3 twice because we're going to be looking at 2 different question 3 exemplars. However, we'll probably do a vote and look at time pressure to see if we're unable to do that many in that time, then we will skip that. Okay? Thank you. So let's start off now going through a live practice for question 3. By the way, for question 1 and 2 practice, as I spoke about, you can check out the previous GCSE English language live. It's not been pinned in the chat, but don't worry about that. So this is the document. I'll share it in the YouTube chat where I've got all of the practice questions from. It's really, really useful. So you can access that nicely. And we'll be answering questions from that very document. So this is the extract, and I would always recommend looking at the question before you even look at the extract. We're going to be focusing on question 3 from this extract. So here we are. So looking at question 3, you now need to refer only to source 3b, Arthur Mumby's description of homeless beggars in St. James's Park. How does Mumby use language to show the unhappiness of the homeless people? So it's always a language-focused question. It's 12 marks rather than in English language paper 1 where you saw that this was an 8 marker. This is 12 marks. So you would have to go through that for another step. Okay, so let's now look at the extract. This is source B. Remember, in English language paper 2, you get 2 sources, whereas in English language paper 1, you only get 1. So hopefully you guys also have access to this on your screen. So looking at source 3B, which is here. And we're being asked, we're not limited to a certain part of the extract either. Where's the questions? We're just saying only in source 3b, how is language being used to show the unhappiness of the homeless people? So let's look at this. Let's highlight some key parts which all link to this. Walking through St. One second, sorry, on the wrong page. Okay, walking through St. James's Park about 4 p.m, I found the open spaces of sward on either side, the path thickly dotted over with strange dark objects. They were human beings, ragged men and ragged women, lying prone and motionless, not as though those who lie down for rest and enjoyment, but as creatures worn out and listless. A park keeper came up. "Who are these?" I asked. "They are men out of work," said he, "and unfortunate girls, servant girls, many of them. What has been out of place and took to the street till they've sunk so low that they can't get a living. It's like this every day till winter comes, and then what they do I don't know. They come as soon as the gates open, always the same faces. They bring broken victuals with them, or else goes to the soup kitchen in Vinegar Yard. And except for that, they lie about here all day. It's a disgrace, sir," said he, To go on in a city like this, and foreigners to see it too. Why, sir, these unfortunates are all over the place. The group, he added with a gesture of disgust, is lousy with them. So you can talk about the specific parts there if you found. We've got ragged men and ragged women, so that anaphora of that structure with the ragged, and men and women is just this idea of every single person. You've got lying prone and motionless, so the choice of adjectives here. But as creatures, and they're described as creatures, so that adjective really does suggest that they do not have any humanly capabilities. They've all been stripped from them. Their ability to earn, their ability to have a voice in society, has all been taken from them. A park keeper came up. Who are these? I asked. They are men out of work, said he, and unfortunate girls, servant girls, many of them, who've been out of place and took to the street. They've sunk so low. Interesting use of verb there. Colloquialism means an informal language. Yeah, as Ellison is saying, that is correct. Okay, now let's read the rest. I looked, and still they did not move. The men were more or less tattered, but their dress was working dress, and so did not seem out of place. But the girls were clothed in what had once been finery. Filthy, draggled muslins, thin remnants of shawls, all rent and gaping, crushed and greasy bonnets of fashionable shape, with springs of torn flowers, bits of faded velvet, hanging from them. Their hands and faces were dirty and weather-stained, and they lay, not as far as I saw, herding with the men, but singly or in little groups, sprawling about the grass in attitudes ungainly and unfeminine and bestial. One flat on her face, another curled up like a dog with her head between her knees, another with her knees bent under her and her cheek on the ground, and her arms spread out stiff and awkward on either side of her. Every pose expressed an absolute degradation and despair. The silence and deadness of the prostrate crowd was appalling. I counted these as I went along, and on one side only of one path leading from the lake to the mall, there were 105 of them. 105 forlorn and voted outcasts, women, many of them, grovelling on the sward in the brightest sunshine of a July afternoon, with Carlton House Terrace and Westminster Abbey looking down on them, and infinite well-dressed citizens passing by on the other side. Okay, so now let's focus on the question, which is, remember, reminding you, how is language being used to highlight that the homeless are unhappy? So, tattered. Their dress was working dress. It did not seem out of place. Filthy dragged muslins. So I'm just highlighting some of the things you could have spoken about in terms of your language, and we'll then go through writing a response live. Thin remnants of shawls, all rent and gaping. Now you can see here that this structure, which just continues with loads of punctuation between it, that is effectively a list. However, because the question is honed in on language, not structure, you don't want to make your point that the writer used a list. Instead, you can say, the fact that grammar is separating continuous adjectives and descriptions of how their fashion was very much restricted highlights that there's an overbearing sense of them being, of their lives being destroyed and tattered in every way possible. So remember to kind of phrase it as if it's language. So one way in which they are expressed as unhappy is through the fashion that they wear. So that's a point you can make. Thin, filthy, rent and gaping, crushed and greasy. So this semantic field of adjectives that are very dirty and filthy and unwashed, uncleaned. Another thing you can talk about in terms of how they are being described is when they say ungainly and unfeminine. Okay, so the use of those two words, it's really highlights how the basic human qualities of these homeless people have been stripped from them and taken from them, highlighting that they are not um, happy at all. And bestial as well. So they've turned into these horrible creatures. So they're called bestial here, and earlier on they were called creatures. So this idea that they have been dehumanized quite literally. Okay. Um, Another way in which their sort of depressed, motionless state is portrayed is when the writer is describing their positions, flat, curled up like a dog. So that simile, like a dog, can be used. Cheek on the ground, her arms spread out stiff and awkward on either side of her. So these very unnatural, uncomfortable positions in which they're put into, it's almost paralleling how difficult their life is. Okay. There's also a lot of alliteration here, so you can see when they say absolute degradation and despair, you've got that alliteration and the deadness. So the D sound, the dental alliteration, it's quite harsh, perhaps talking about the brutalities of life. So now I think we've annotated this enough. Let's go and write our paragraph for answering this question 3. I'll copy and paste the question so you guys can see, anyone who's new can see what we're answering. You've got some really good points in the chat, so keep them coming on, especially on the YouTube chat. And you can start perhaps answering as well on your own paper. So I'll make this black. And I'll try and make the points different colors so you can see the gradual how we're writing. So we can start off by saying the writer employs a range of language techniques that contribute to this cumulative sense, i.e., there's a building sense of the beggars being a 2GZ being a societal anomaly. So they are outcasted in every way, and that is how they're described as being unhappy. So isolated in fashion and behavior. So there I've just given a mini introductory sentence. You don't have to do an introduction, don't get stressed. But this sentence here was just something that I made right now so we can kind of outline the two different ways in which the beggars are being described as quite unhappy. Okay, so now let's start with our first point. Through the motif of fashion. You could have said motif, you could have said extended metaphor, but probably motif would have been more appropriate as it wasn't really a metaphor. The fashion was being talked about quite literally. So, through a motif of fashion, the writer is able to touch base with the lacking resources and finery that the homeless missed or could not experience or no longer experienced. Okay, so that's our point. We are delivering the fact that the language device is the motif of fashion, and the effect of it is that the homeless people have this lack of finery that the rich people do have. Okay, and now let's support this with a quotation. The men, and I would always recommend doing embedded quotes, they are just far more liked by the examiner because it means that you're cutting out unnecessary sentences, easy for them to read. The men are described through the adjective tattered, otherwise bearing connotations of wear and a lack of maintenance. Consequently, bearing connotations of wear and a lack of maintenance. That is similarly prescribed to the people themselves, i.e., as their fashion is quite tattered, it also describes their state of being quite tattered, torn apart, quite fragmented and fractured. Their mentality is going to be described through their clothing. Okay. Now let's do some analysis, and I'll use orange for that. When describing the now decrepit state of the previously elegant materialistic wealth, listing is used in filthy dragged muslin, thin remnants. And when you're quoting a list, you can shorten it. Filthy drag muslin, thin remnants of shawls. And what else did it say? All rent and gaping. In which, what can we focus on here? We can say the oxymoronic, which means the almost conflicting. So the oxymoronic implication of the grand muslin, which is a quite fine and renowned material, being now filthy and putrid, parallels the devastating downfall and loss that these people have endured. Okay. So that's a bit of analysis there, and we are now going to do some further analysis. You can also say, on a literal level, the motif of fashion serves to remind the reader of the inadequate wealth, or serves to highlight to the reader the inadequate wealth disparity, and portrays the homeless as miserable due to through the description, through the fragmented and broken finery that they once owned. And we can say finery and stability that they once owned. So that's our first paragraph there. So we've got our language, we've got our analysis, and we've got a bit of further analysis to possibly get that better grade. Yep, it is your last English exam, so I'm glad that you guys have got to this point. You made it almost on the last one. And then for those of you who are not doing the A level or any equivalent qualifications for English in the future, you're done with it. Okay. As the text progresses, the writer employs an evocative semantic field of animalistic imagery when referring to the destitute, which just means the homeless, the poor, etc. Mr. Everything English, is he doing a live now as well? I have no clue. He's probably got a lot more people because obviously he does English. He's very laggy. Is he not able to fix it? Okay. Oh wow. He needs some of my amazing equipment where I can host 40 different Kahoots at once. Okay. The writer implicitly. It's always good to almost describe how the writer is doing something. Are they sneakily doing something? Are they doing it in a very obvious way? Are they doing it explicitly, etc.? Thank you, Logan. It's better here. What can I say? My PC is amazing. Yeah, I know it's amazing. Isn't it? It's crazy. He's using his phone. See, I'm using my laptop, so fair enough. Okay. The writer implicitly cites this through the verb herding, which is typically synonymous. Hopefully, you guys can pinch the vocab I'm using. I feel like the chat, when there's any more than 100 people on a live, is always going to be crazy. I think it's the anonymity of it, the fact that everyone's anonymous, they just go crazy. Okay, the writer implicitly cites this through the verb herding, which is typically synonymous with unintelligent, voiceless creatures of sheep and herd stock or livestock. Well, thank you. I have tons of experience. That's such a sweet thing to say, Ghost Stops. Thank you very much. I am forever thankful for you guys. Okay. So that is our evidence there. We've got a bit of analysis, but let's now continue this. I'm good, thank you. Shush. Oh my gosh, Shush is back. Okay, so let's do some further analysis. We can say this perhaps enables the reader to infer how the homeless are like these creatures are stripped of their intelligence and humanity, and also their choice, their intelligence, choice, and humanity outcasted from society. We're still on a question 3 exemplar. After this, either we'll vote whether you want to do another question 3 exemplar or you want to move on to a question 4. Shush. Why is that funny when I say shush? Okay. And we can say furthermore, wild animals also connote this sense of wild and savage behavior, which is mentioned when the writer completely robs the homeless when referring to them as unfeminine and beastly. Okay, and entirely contradicting the gentle and womanly stereotype for women. Okay. So that's probably enough. We've done our 2 paragraphs there, and it just needs to be in depth. So here I've only spoken mainly about 2 quotes, but I've used further embedded quotes for evidence. I would recommend you do the same. Don't put too much pressure. You can do 3 paragraphs if you want. Okay? So I'll make these checklists so that we can tick them as we go along. So that is the question 3 exemplar for you guys. I'm going to ask you now, do you want to do another question 3 exemplar, or do you want to do a question 4 mark answer? This is for AQA, yeah. If you want to do a question 3, put 3 in the chat. If you want to do a question 4, then put 4 in the chat. And yes, we'll be doing a question 5 as well. Of course we will. Yes, Ahana, we are. Okay, so it seems most people are saying to do the question 4. So we'll do a question 4 now. As soon as I say 4, people come up and say 3. We'll do another question 4, and then if we have time at the end, we'll go back to doing a question 3. I don't know how to do a poll in the chat. I can't. I'm not able to do it. I think you need a certain amount of subscribers for that, so it's fine. We'll just do a question 4, come back to a question 3 if we have time at the end, because we might as well get through as much as possible. Yeah, for question 1 and 2, as it says on the screen, you can check out the previous English language live that I haven't pinned in the chat, but it's available on the YouTube channel. Wow, someone on TikTok is saying I'm yapping. You don't have to be on here if you don't want to, but I think some people are finding it helpful, so it's okay. Yeah, TikTok viewers. Yeah. I know. I mean, how? Okay, yeah. Anyway, I'll continue. I won't even put any emphasis on that. So let's do another question now. We're going to do a question for exemplar. So let's find the text which I did it on. Talking about Prime Minister, actually, have you guys? Did you guys see the debate between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer yesterday? You need to watch that. That was actually really entertaining. Thank you. Oh, the people on YouTube are the OGs. You will forever protect me. There's not really any haters on YouTube, thank God. Okay, let me find the text that we're going to do the question 4 practice on. They look like children having an argument. That's so funny. Although Rishi Sunak did make some good points, to be fair. Okay, so here's the source which we'll be talking about. Okay, source A. So let's look at the question now and read the question first. Question 4 always looks intimidating, but don't worry, it's only a couple more marks greater than the previous question, so don't be stressed. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source 5A together with the whole of source 5B, so both of them now. That's really the main difference there. Compare how the writers have conveyed their views and experiences about their expeditions. In your answer, you could compare the different views and experiences, compare the methods used to convey those views and experiences, support your ideas with quotations. You know what's funny? I don't understand why they say in your answer you could, because you have to. You have to do this stuff. Okay. So we're going to have to read section source 5A and let's read source 5B and let's keep an eye out for when the writers have conveyed their views and experiences about the expedition. So just key points in terms of, we can talk about language and structure. So Source 5A, the 20th century literature nonfiction, Douglas Mawson is writing in 1915 about his exploration of the Antarctic. Here, after the death of his companions, he's trying to reach the safety of the hut. Remember, this is nonfiction, so this did happen. Alone. I was hauling the sledge through deep snow up a fairly steep slope when my feet broke through into a crevice. Fortunately, as I fell, I caught my weight with my arms on the edge and did not plunge in further than my thighs. I decided to try a crossing about 50 yards from further along, hoping that there it would be better. But it took an unexpected turn, catching me unawares. This time I shot through the centre of the snow in a flash, having seen my comrades perish and having lost hope over ever reaching the hut. I'll pin the Discord server, okay. I had many times wondered what the end would be like. So as I fell through into the crevice, the thought, so this is the end, blazed up in my mind. For I expected that the next moment the sledge would follow through, crash on my head, and all go to the unseen bottom. But the unexpected happened, and the sledge held, the deep snow acting as a brake. Realizing that the sledge was holding, I began to look around. The crevice was, thank you for defending me, Shush. The crevice was somewhat over 6 feet wide with sheer walls descending into blue depths below. My clothes were now stuffed with snow, broken from the roof, and very chilly it was. Above, at the other end of the 14-foot rope, was the daylight seen through the hole in the snow lid. In my weak condition, the prospects of climbing out seemed very poor indeed. But in a few moments the struggle was begun. A great effort brought a knot in the rope within my grasp, and after a moment's rest I was able to draw myself up and reach another, and at length hauled my body onto the overhanging snow lid. Then, when all appeared to be well, and before I could get to quite solid ground, a further section of the lid gave way, throwing me once more down the full length of the rope. There, exhausted, weak, and chilled, hanging freely in space, and slowly turning round as the rope twisted one way and the other, I felt that I had done my utmost and failed, that I had no more strength to try again, and that all was over except the passing. There, on the brink of the great beyond, I well remember how I looked forward to the peace of the great release, how almost excited I was at the prospect of the unknown to be revealed. My strength was fast ebbing. In a few minutes it would be too late. It was the occasion for a supreme attempt. Fired by the passion that burns the blood, new power seemed to come as I applied myself to one last tremendous effort. The struggle occupied some time, but I slowly worked upwards to the surface, this time emerging feet first. I pushed myself out, extended at full length on the snow lid, and then shuffled safely onto the solid ground at the side. Then came the reaction from the great strain, and lying there alongside the sledge, my mind faded into blank. Okay, so that's the first one. Yep, this is for a QA, but it's applicable to Edexcel because it's quite similar to that. So that is the first one, and let's read the second source because question 4, as we said, requires both sources. This next one is written by Kate Marston. We'll read that and then we'll answer the question 4 live. I'm glad there's so many of you guys here. It's lovely to see you. And come on to YouTube for those of you on TikTok. That's where the real OGs are at, and everybody's on there. And it's lovely to see you guys. And I can see the chat much easier there. So, and we'll also be doing a Kahoot later on, but the TikTok would have ended by then. Okay. In 1891, Kate Marston, a British missionary and explorer, participated in an expedition to Siberia. Here she describes her journey through a mosquito-infested marsh and forest. Okay. More bogs and marshes for several miles, and then I grew so sleepy and sick that I begged to rest, notwithstanding our position on marshy ground, which had not as yet dried from the heat of the summer sun. I was asleep in 5 minutes, lying on the damp ground with only a fan to shelter me from the sun. On again for a few more miles, but I began to feel the effects of this sort of travelling. In a word, I felt utterly worn out. It was as much as I could do to hold on to the horse, and I nearly tumbled off several times in the effort. The cramp in my body and lower limbs was indescribable, and I had to discard the cushion under me because it became soaked through and through with the rain, and rode on the broad, bare wooden saddle. What feelings of relief rose when the time of rest came, and the pitching of tents, and the brewing of tea. Often I sleep quite soundly till morning, awaking to find that the mosquitoes had been hard at work in my slumbers, in spite of veil and gloves, leaving great itching lumps that turned me sick. Once we saw two calves that had died from exhaustion from the bites of these pests. And the white hair of our poor horses was generally covered with lots of blood, due to partly mosquitoes and partly to prodigious horse flies. But those lepers, they suffered far more than I suffered, and that was the one though, added to the strength that God supply that kept me from collapsing entirely. My second thunderstorm was far worse than the first. The forest seemed on fire, and the rain dashed in our faces with almost blinding force. My horse plunged and reared, flew first to one side and then to the other, dragging me almost amongst bushes and trees, so that I was in danger of being caught by the branches and hurled to the ground. After this storm was After this storm, one of the horses, carrying stores and other things, sank into a bog nearly to its neck, and the help of all the men was required to get it out. Soon after the storm, we were camping and drinking tea, when I noticed that all of the men were eagerly talking to each other and gesticulating. I asked what it all meant, and was told that a large bear was supposed to be in the neighbourhood, according to a report from a post station close at hand. There was a general priming of firearms, except in my case, for I did not know how to use my revolver. So I thought I had better pass it on to someone else, lest I might shoot a man in mistake for a bear. We mounted again and went on. The usual chattering this time was exchanged for a dead silence, this being our first bear experience. But we grew wiser as we proceeded, and substituted noise for silence. We hurried on as fast as possible to get through the miles of forests and bogs. I found it best not to look about me, because when I did so, every large stump of a fallen tree took the shape of a bear. When my horse stumbled over the roots of a tree or shield at some object unseen by me, my heart began to gallop. Okay, so we've read both extracts now. Our next step is to answer the question. Okay, it's lovely to see so many of you on YouTube and TikTok. We are now going to answer the question for live. So make sure you are trying to, since you've just read both of the extract, it's a good idea for you to also answer it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through a question 5, which is going to be doing that live as well. So, again, going back to the question, compare how the writers have conveyed their views and experiences about their various expeditions. If you have any questions, you can comment on the YouTube chat. Okay, so let's me open the document and then we can answer the question here. If anything is blurry, do let me know and I'll try and zoom in a bit more. So, for this, I think if you're asking about the structure for this question, because you're comparing the two extracts, what you constantly want to do, as opposed to doing one paragraph on source A, one paragraph on source B, you want to constantly be comparing them in different aspects, because that is a comparison they're asking you to do. They're not asking you to just describe one in one paragraph and another in the other. Am I doing a biology live tomorrow? Yes, I am. And we'll be going through some common questions. Okay. It will be AQA and it's also applicable for Edexcel for biology. Let's start now. So for this question 4, I'll copy and paste it so you can see. And it's a 16 marker, not a 20 marker. Thank you, Bilal. I appreciate that. Okay. In source A, the writer, you can just begin like that. There's not too much based on how you start your answer. Assuming the role of the reporter in this article shares captivating and powerful observations and if anybody's confused as to what I wrote, the writer assuming the role of the reporter, because the writer could be instead somebody who's observing the experience. So he was, in fact, this was a first person experience there. So the writer, assuming the role of the reporter in this article, shares captivating and powerful observations from a distinct and distant perspective, because that's the point that we're making, that in some areas, even though he was experiencing all of the things, he was being quite reflective about it, almost as if he was looking back on it, which I guess he is doing in a way. But if he's describing something, then it's weird to like be quite reflective. You would just be in the moment, I was feeling this, this, and this. So that's our introduction. Immediately, from the onset of the article, heavily graphic auditory imagery launches the reader into the rapid severity of events. Okay, let's now put some evidence to support this point here. So this is seen through, sorry, I'm doing this live, so just flicking between the screens. This is seen through the sound of mobile phones ringing. One second. I'm just trying to find the quotes. Oh. Oh, thank you, offline, for telling your tutor about me. I appreciate that. Okay. This is, I'm using the wrong quote here. So, auditory imagery, let's go back to this. Am I muted? Or am I going silence? Oh, is somebody else muted? Sorry, I'm getting confused if you're talking about me or not. So let's talk about some things we can make in terms of comparison. I fell as I caught my weight with my own arms. I decided to try crossing about 50 yards. This time I shot through the center of the snow. So we can talk about the choice of verbs here. So shot. I fell. Crash. Okay. So let's use that. So heavy graphic imagery launches the reader into the states of events. We can say this is seen through the use of the extreme verb or the verbs. We'll describe them later. So through the use of the verbs shot, fell, and crash. These intensify the situation and mimic the absolute panic that the writer experiences. This is applicable for both AQA and Edexcel, but it's more the question itself is for an AQA tailored. So this is seen through the use of the verbs shot, fell, and crash. These intensify the situation and mimic the absolute panic that the writer experiences. It's very frantic in that situation. Okay. Now we are going to compare that with the next, because remember the question 4 is all about comparing. So if you're going to make a point for the first one, you want to have something to compare it with your next point. So here we've got, I grew so sleepy and sick. I was asleep. So there's this very contrast in it being very action heavy in the section in the source 5a, where he's crashing, he's falling, he's all sorts of things. And here it's I grew sleepy. I was asleep. Very like tired and very slow imagery. So that contrast there is a comparison point. Remember, you can also make similar um points as well as similarities versus differences. You can mention both of them when you're comparing them. So we can say we'll put our pink here. You need to use comparative vocab to show the examiner that you are talking about your another point. However, within source B, there is a semantic field of tired and fatigued. There's a semantic field of tire and fatigue that contrasts source A's action-packed opening. The writer experiences feeling sleepy, and the repetition of this in both the adjective and verb form expand the sense of drifting into a sleepy state, a sleepy and exhausted state. Okay, so that is a point that you can make a comparative point there. You can see here when we're looking at the bullet points of what the question is asking you to do, compare the different views and experiences, so that's pretty much what we've done directly. Compare the methods used to convey them. Well, we spoke about the use of verbs, so they both used verbs and the employment of verbs. However, in the first one, there's very action-packed verbs, whereas in the other one, it's very tired, and therefore, okay, quotations. So that's one point we can make comparison points. Are you guys watching two lives at the same time? I feel sorry for you. You have to keep switching your brain on, but I mean, if you're getting the best out of both worlds. Okay, so let's think about another point that we can make in terms of comparing their experiences. It's important to also consider the structure. So comparing the beginning with the beginning of the two different sources and then comparing the structure. So is it a cyclical structure? Is one of them cyclical and one ends at a certain point? Or how long should you spend on the question? I mean, it's 16 marks, so probably 20, 25 minutes. Hmm. How many paragraphs do you think you need to do? I would say probably about 3 paragraphs with 3 different comparison points, and try and make them at least maybe one similarity, 2 differences, or 2 differences, one similarity. Make sure it's a good mix. Okay. Um, the cramp in my body and lower limbs was indescribable, and I had to discard the cushion under me. So here there's a lot of emphasis on sickness and experiencing bodily pain. Do we see any in this extract? Let's see. So we've got what can we see? The struggle was begun. A great effort. I was able to draw myself up and reach another, and at length hauled my body onto the overhanging snow lid, hanging freely in space and slowly turning around as the rope twisted one way or another. So, hanging freely, that point in which he's hanging freely, often freely connotes this sense of being in control and of yourself at least, and very happy. It's very positive connotations, whereas the fact that he's hanging freely and slowly turning around, it's actually eerie in this situation as he's on the brink of possible death. Now, in contrast to that, you can see in the other extract there's a sense that she's unable to stop moving, this fidgety panic. So the way in which they are being described in terms of their actions and their motion is completely different, and that's a point we can discuss. So in source, both sources employ what type of language is being used. we can say adjectives and figurative language to either describe the eerie stillness of being on the brink of death in source A, or the fidgeting and irritating continuous motion or unstoppable motion in response to the mosquito sickness or the mosquito frenzy. To both narrate a sense of discomfort, because in both situations, both of the writers are in uncomfortable situation. However, one of them is experiencing being very still, and the other is experiencing being very itchy and constantly moving. So we can use the quotations to do that now. This point is quite an out there point, and it's showing that you can literally compare any point, okay? Because paper 2 is much more flexible. With paper 1, you wanted to compare more focused on the language devices, how one language device is very different to the other. In this case, we're looking at actually comparing their views and their experiences, what is actually different about them. So we can now use quotations to support our answer. So we can talk about how in source A, he was hanging freely. So I wanted to have enough time also, guys, to go over the question 5. So I might end this question prematurely, but I'll try and finish this paragraph for you. I hope you're finding this helpful to a certain extent. It's lovely. Actually, I find it quite enjoyable to be here and see you guys all chatting away. So in source A, the writer is described... No, the writer is... And then we can use the embedded quote. Hanging freely in space and slowly turning around. So the writer is described to be hanging freely in space and slowly turning. The adverb freely juxtaposedly, or we can say that the adverb freely bears connotations of control, peace, and calmness, which completely inverts and juxtaposes. It's important to use the word juxtaposes because you're telling the examiner, I also recognize this as another English language technique. I'm not an examiner, actually. I'm just a past student. So I'm not an examiner, unfortunately. Spurs. Why are you guys talking about Spurs in the chat? Okay, the adverb freely bears connotations of control, peace, and calmness, which completely inverts and juxtaposes the situation at hand, or we can say the life or death situation at hand. We hate Tottenham. Guys, I'm sorry to say this, but that's the team I support. So don't mark your GCSE. Guys, if I mark your GCSEs, you'll all be getting 9s, so okay. This then eerie stillness that is created intensifies the absolute discomfort of the situation, as any sudden movement would cause immediate death. Sense of liberty, lack of constraint. That's some really nice points there made in the chat. You guys are doing really good. Okay. Now we can say about source B, and then we'll do a question 5 practice. So, on the other hand, or you can say conversely, that's probably a better phrase to use. Conversely, source B, the writer in source B takes a alternative route to figuratively depict the discomfort felt. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend repeating adjectives. However, if it's the point that we're making, that they're both using different means to convey the discomfort they are feeling, then it's good to repeat the point because you're showing the examiner that you're sustaining that overall level of you're constantly answering the question. Okay. Conversely, the writer in source B takes an alternative route to figuratively depict the discomforts felt. This is done through, and then let's find the actual quotations. So she's described to be experiencing a cramp, through experiencing an indescribable cramp. And on top of that, what else? Experiencing exhaustion from the bites and experiencing great itching lumps. Okay. This is question 4. Conversely, the writer in source B takes an alternative, because remember, we're comparing the two texts here, so it can only be question 4. Because question 4 is always going to be comparing both sources, effectively how the experience is different. So generally quite a broad question. Conversely, the writer in source B takes an alternative route to figuratively depict the discomfort felt. This is done through experiencing an indescribable cramp from the great itching lumps. The cramp connotes or suggests this sense of pain that is unmendable temporarily and highlights the irritation. Is that word? Irritation? Yeah, the irritation evoked by the bites. Okay, and then you can give one final sentence at the bottom, just comparing those two. So you can just say, for example, both are successful in contrasting, in developing a sense of pain and unbearable discomfort through alternative language methods. Note how this literally directly answers the question, and that's something that you want to say. Now, I've only done 2 paragraphs here, but you want to try and maybe do 3 since it is a 16 marker, so you want to get those top marks. But I'm moving on to a question 5, so we can do a bit of question 5 practice. But yeah, and then we'll do a Kahoot at the end. Yep, if you have a question, you can just ask it on the YouTube chat. This is for question 4. Yeah, question 5 shouldn't be any longer than one and a half page, I would say, because it's pretty much, I mean, probably 2 pages if you have big handwriting. Okay, so let's now move on to a section B question. Give me a second and I'm going to find another one. Thank you to everybody seeing that. I'm going to just find a question that we can answer and give a section B response to. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we are going to do a write an article question. So this is for GCSE English language. We are now going to start answering a question 5, so the effective equivalent for the paper 1 story. Now, question 5 is always going to be a statement of some sort, and then you're going to get a write a letter to, write an article, write a speech, one of those things. So here the statement is. The cost of transport, and we'll say public transport, is getting higher and higher. It needs to become faster to compensate. And then you're always going to have some person said that, and then you then are going to be asked, write an article in which you argue your opinion on the statement. Okay, and then you get marks. So in this case, it's going to be 40 marks as such. Okay, so let's answer and respond to this question and see how we can answer it. It's not like paper one where we could literally memorize something. It's the case in which you're going to have to pretty much do everything on the spot. So a plan would be a good idea. So I want everybody in on this. If you can if you want to do well in your GCSEs, I would recommend paying attention. Let's focus now just for this last bit, and then we'll do a Kahoot afterwards. Okay, so let's all put our minds to it. The statement is the cost of public transport is getting higher and higher. It needs to become faster to compensate. Write an article in which you argue for your opinion on statement. Now, of course, you guys are all going to have your different arguments there. So let's think of a plan, and normally in that planning stage you realize which point that which side of the fence you're going to sit on. So let's see some points we can make that this makes us think of. So traveling faster and faster. So what can we say? You do not understand the question. So the question is saying that public transport costs are getting higher because people have to pay. Normally it's to perhaps this is a timely question because it's talking about how there's lots of train strikes and therefore the fares for trains, the fares for buses, they're getting more expensive, and therefore it should become faster in order to compensate. Transport should become more efficient. So things that we can say, well, we can talk about, there's rapid development in the 20th century. Remember, you want to make this persuasive. You want to include your stats, your figures, your stories, your dialogue from real people. You can make up quotes. You can do whatever you want. You've got creative freedom here. So rapid development in the 20th century to the 21st century. You can talk about how we've progressed from horse and cart carriages. By the way, this question is always going to be somehow linked to your section B. So if you have been asked about trains, then your question is going to be about trains. So you can actually get some figures from the extract that you were given. So we've progressed from horses and carriages all the way to cars and, rockets going to outer space. So what is the excuse for the lack of efficiency? The only possible excuse could be the lack of funding. Okay, and therefore lack of funding, that's an important point because it suggests that there's a neglection in a certain sector. Therefore, the people working in that sector, they're going to be neglected. So a lot of points you can make from that are quite compelling and convincing. Okay, so what other points can we make? You can ask any question 5. And this is just a practice one that you could say. On top of that, you can talk about how travel is getting expensive, the fares are becoming unbearable. You can talk about the cost of living crisis. You want to talk about recent things, so things that are very much relevant. Money should be better spent on travel as opposed to materialistic things. As in the government should be putting more money into that. Okay, so The burden disproportionately falls on lower income households who find themselves forced to make the essential decision. That's a really good point, i.e., it's what we call regressive. It's much harder on the people who are struggling the most in society, because obviously they have lower disposable income because a greater proportion of their income is then going to be spent on travel, whereas if you earn a higher income, then the amount spent on travel is going to be a smaller proportion. So let us now answer this and start our article. So our article's got to have loads of things in mind. It might be helpful if you write a checklist of all the things you want to include: your compelling language, your rhetorical questions, your dialogue, your alliteration, your listing, anything like that. There's an endless list of what you can include. I'm pretty sure Mr. Everything English has quite good lists on what you can include, so maybe go over to his channel. So let's answer now. So I'm thinking we could start with something like, we all want to live in a world where efficient travel is both commonplace and economically available for the average you and I. So we've started off on a more colloquial, informal kind of way, which is acceptable because an article can be both broadsheet or not, more informal. It can be any sort of style. Now, what's good about this opening is we all. So that's a good method of rhetoric, which means persuasion. By suggesting we all, you're grouping everybody into the same category without necessarily consulting them on whether they actually feel that way. You're suggesting that the majority of people believe this. It's almost a fact. Well done to everybody giving some really good points in the chat. I like them. Okay. And then the average you and I, again, bringing everybody onto the same level. If the writer is on the same level as the readers, then it reduces any sort of barrier between them. Okay, next. However, to what extent is this attainable? So we've already got our rhetorical question in there. So let me zoom in so you guys can see this a bit better. However, to what extent is this attainable? To what extent is it permissible to fuel the burning oven that is climate change? Because if you're making more efficient travel, you're straining resources on the climate, and that's always a good point to put in there. And what's good about this is you've got repetitive use of rhetorical questions, which is a good technique there. And on top of that, you've got the burning oven that is climate change. So you are using a nice metaphor for that. To dig deeper into debt. To dig deeper into debt for a ticket. To shave a few minutes off mindless travel time. So you've got your alliteration there. So you're putting a lot of thought into these sentences, into the structure, okay? Um, and what's really good about this introduction is it not only is got loads of good techniques, but it's introducing you to the different points that we're going to talk about in the article. The debt, the climate change, the time, the fact that it's mindless. Loads of different points are all being mentioned at this point here. You've got a dash. Any use of grammar is also really good, especially dashes, semicolons, anything like that to suggest that there's going to be a subordinate clause. Minutes and mindless, that is also alliteration. Travel time. So the repeated use of repetition of the repetition of the rhetorical questions is another good technique. Okay, so that is our introduction. Next, to the average, hard-working, diligent, what have we got there? We've got triplet. Taxpayer. It's always good to take the side of the taxpayers. That's a good advice for you in the exam, because taxpayers are people who are paying tax. They're taking out their own money to help the government, and therefore they expect certain standards to be met, certain resources to be available. You've got triplet there as well. To the average, hardworking, diligent taxpayer, public transport is a necessity. We'll put there, semicolon, a non-negotiable. So this is a really good technique as well. What the technique is when you go from words which increase in severity. For example, if you go from saying someone is round to saying they are fat, for example, you go from being even more severe in your next adjective. So here, it's a necessity, and then it's a non-negotiable. It's something that's required for basic life, and then it's something that is expected. Yes, Winnie, that is a good point. You can create a character and then keep going back to them with your dialogue. Giving persuasion through stories is a really good way. That's why often in adverts, if you notice, they normally use personal stories like, oh, I went on Weight Watchers and I lost this much, rather than 30,000 people lose weight every day. So we trust stories more. So that is a good method of persuasion. The burning oven, because the fact that it's burning links to the idea of climate change and the earth heating up. Okay. You can come up with a fake person, yeah, because you're coming up with a story. Especially if you're writing an article, you can say, we interviewed Joe Blogs here and he said blah blah blah. So yeah, that is encouraged. To the average, hardworking, diligent taxpayer, public transport is a necessity, a non-negotiable. By the way, I'm doing this live, so if I can do it, you guys can also do it as well. And then we can say another semicolon. Let's extend this. We can say a bypass to a means of feeding our families. So that's a really that's use of emotive language there, not just saying a way in which people get to work so that it can earn a living wage. A bypass to feeding our families. You've got the fricative alliteration there, really honing in on the fact that the vulnerability of the families, they need to be protected. Behind our brave fronts, an invisible noose constricts our throats. This is a sentence that you can use in any of your things. I just made it up right now. So it's quite a good one, I think. Not blowing my own trumpet there, but Behind our brave fronts, an invisible noose constricts our throats, i.e., this idea of something that is slowly depleting our control over time so that we end up having no control over the lives we live. Use that phrase because it's pretty much applicable to whatever situation you're in terms of the exam. Noose is the rope that people put, often with capital punishment, around people's necks. Okay, next. And now let's expand on this. So the invisible noose, this idea that something is slowly tightening our control, we need to then expand on that so we can then say the travel cost rise. So it's good to constantly flip back and forth between something that's very figurative, the invisible noose, to something that's very declarative, obvious, simple. So you're creating those constant comparisons. So you're hearing this figurative and then you directly link it to what you actually mean. Planning, I would say maybe 2 minutes, and that is quite a lot of time in the exam. Thank you to everybody sharing the live. So continuing on. I mean, it depends. If ideas come to you early, then you don't have to spend that long planning. If you ideas aren't coming to you, maybe spend a couple more minutes in 2 minutes. It's up to you, really. It is. It depends on the exam. And trust me, if you're struggling with a plan, most people are, because if it's a struggling topic, most people will be struggling with it. Okay. The travel cost rise. The noose tightens. Wait, we can say atop of the cost of living crisis, the travel costs rises, the noose tightens. So we're now turning this metaphor into a extended metaphor because we're constantly linking back to it. Okay? And then we can then dash, or we can say semicolon or colon. Suffocating what little, so it's turning into a semantic field now because our vocabulary is linking to that. Suffocating what little disposable income left in our hollow bank accounts. Is it good to add a one-line paragraph? Absolutely. That might be a good technique to use. I remember that we did that when we were looking at our paper 1, so you can do it in your paper 2 last question as well. So the noose tightens, that's the extended metaphor there, as I mentioned. Suffocating, that verb there links again back to the extended metaphor, as I said, making it the semantic field. And then we're linking it to actual points that we're making. What little disposable income left in our hollow bank account. So we're adding these adjectives to really cause the reader to feel sympathetic for the general populace. By the way, we're going to do a Kahoot at 8 p.m. So I'm going to try and get as much of this written up as possible. Choiceless. You got your one-word sentence there with a really epic, dynamic adjective or adverb or verb or whatever you want. I would say have it to really cause the reader to pause on an important issue. So choiceless. The disenfranchised working class must always pay. So here is almost a sarcastic sentence, but it highlights the severity of who is being made to pay for this. Disenfranchised means underrepresented. You may recognize that word from when I was talking about the Anne Inspector Calls lives. Working class must always pay. And now we're going to bring in other perspectives. So we can say, after interviewing families, within the most deprived London boroughs, getting our geography in here as well, the most deprived London boroughs, in response to the rising travel fares in the midst of the cost of living crisis, I spoke to the Smiths. Just a general name, made up, and all of the quotes are going to be made up. So it's quite useful to get Stratford regeneration. We're really using our geography knowledge here. It's good because the more reading you do, the more ideas you're going to have for what you can put. And using somebody else's quote, that's another way to reinforce your point in terms of an article. So what's the quote? Let's say, I feel chained by the metal of travel. Look how metaphorical the family is. They must have just done their GCSE English language after this quote, because look, they are amazing at their figurative language there. The rising fares. My wife had been skipping breakfast and supper, and Lord knows what else. I hope you like my creativity here. I'm thinking of the average British family. And there you go, my wife, which suggests this sense of vulnerability, protecting, and how. No, I don't have a. No. Okay. Let me highlight this quote. I do not have a wife. I'm speaking as the family. Do I have a family? Of course, everybody has family. Or, well, most fortunate people have families. Mr. Smith emotionally outpoured. You're just joining or joking? Okay. So I'm just reading the chat. Okay. So that's our quote. Next, what we want to say. Let's use a quote from the town's mayor. The town's mayor, because it's an article, so it's going to take lots of opinions. The town's mayor later commented, "Sit tight, and stay calm. I'm just trying to think of the average politician. That's probably what they would say. Okay. Sit tight and stay calm. And then we're not going to have any addition to that because it's quite obvious that the fact that sit tight and stay calm is insufficient to the heavy emotional previous quote. It highlights that it's insufficient. Miss, please tell everybody where you're from so people stop attacking. Why is everybody attacking Jude? Because of me. Don't attack, guys. You are all should be friends. Okay. Let's now add some statistics. Statistics later confirmed. Statistics later confirmed within the last year, 60% of UK parents felt the need to sacrifice meals. Okay, I'm using the idea of meals because the sense of missing out on food is quite unhealthy and highlights that nobody can have the basic necessities and therefore travel shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a need. Lying restless, starved, and alone. Okay, now any good article would at least take account of the other perspective. So, how can we take another perspective? Well, let me highlight that because statistics is important. We can take another perspective by talking about how advancement in travel is important because of technological advancement. Britain was only able to colonize all of the countries because of ships and ports and literally transport. So without transport, the world wouldn't be as it is today. And obviously, there's a lot of disadvantages with that and advantages because it allows trade, it allows some countries to develop. So that can be sitting on the other side of this. No, Jude is my cousin. He is. So he's not lying. That was a joke, by the way. He isn't my cousin, but so I'm surprised some of you actually believe that. Do the exam boards use real life scenarios? Definitely with A levels, they do that, but I'm not sure about GCSEs. They might, depending on. Mm, they don't want to make it too predictable, so I don't think that would happen. Okay, let's finish this and then we'll start the Kahoot. Okay, so taking the other side, we can say it must be admitted to highlight that even the writer is taking account of the other side. That travel, nonetheless, has been a pathway to earth shaking technological advancements and economic development. That, and then we can say The leap from horse and cart pull. What are they called? Horse and cart pulled carriages all the way to rockets to the moon within only 100 years revolutionizes the life for many. And thus, how can millions be wasted on rockets when public transport is heaving with inefficiencies that heaving with inefficiencies, and then it's always good to sort of end with a declarative and say this is incompetent and must be changed, or something with a declarative that highlights your final position on the argument. So we took account of the opposition, but we then turned it around to our perspective. Okay, so you probably have time to include a lot more points there, but this was more about quality. So you can see the layering up, the use of adding cumulative language points before you then move on to writing another sentence. Okay, so it's mainly about thinking about quality over quantity. You don't want to care too much about how much you're writing. Should I send this file on my website, the one I'm answering, or the questions sheet? I'll make this available anyway. It's now time for Kahoot, guys. So for those of you on TikTok who want to join in with the English language Kahoot, you can join the YouTube live. But I'm going to end the TikTok live. So thank you all for joining, and I will see you there. Okay. You know, I don't know if you guys are on TikTok as much, but do you know my GCSE maths? It's the guy who does lots of maths live, and he's I don't think he's a teacher. I'm not too sure. I think he's a tutor, and he's like, yeah. If you know who he is, he's very nice, by the way. He's always supporting my little TikTok lives. It's very cute. So also watch his videos. I think he does a lot of good resources as well. It's very nice. Okay, so let's do a Kahoot. I'll get that ready. Thank you guys for paying attention up to this point. Do you need to know about the reader in question 3? So question 3 is about language. So you don't have to. Yeah, you want to talk about the reader. You want to talk about the effect of the reader. 100%. What was the noise? Oh, I just moved the papers in my room. That's probably why. Oh no, it's the microphone. Sorry, I keep moving that. What? The article isn't necessarily grade 9 level because we didn't. I would have spent much more time. I was talking through it, so I would have had more time to write a bit more in depth. But the level of it was grade 9, so it's not the depth. It would have much more depth. Yep, I'm gonna get the Kahoot up in a sec. Give me. Chidima, you're scared. Why are you scared? For the exam? Don't be scared. By tomorrow you would have done this time tomorrow you would have done all of your English and you'll be finished unless you want to do the actual. Shush, don't worry. If you found paper 1 challenging, maybe that means that your strengths are in paper 2. So sorry, Kahoot is just loading. I mean, I don't know how they can actually make a Kahoot for GCSE English language, but we'll see what happens. I think you guys will do well. I believe in you, as I always have done. You guys are going to smash the exam. Thank you, Clayton. Okay. Here's the Kahoot. I'll share the link on the chat. Of course, I'll pray for you guys. 100%. I do every day, actually. Genuinely, I'm not even joking. I wrote a story about running out of Tesco. I mean, okay, here's the thank you, Yumna. I appreciate that. You guys are the sweetest. It's easy for me to be so happy when I've got such lovely people on the chat. And don't worry, guys, if you can't join this one, I'll just open up multiple Kahoots at the same time. Okay, that game has become full, so I'll start that and you can join this game. Otherwise. Okay, if you weren't able to join that one, there's another Kahoot starting. I'll share the link so you can access it more easily. Galactic is at the top here. A Child of God is 3rd. Blobs Builder is 4th. Layla is 5th. Memes Riz is at the top there. Goodbye, Edwin. Okay, that game is pretty much full now. So if there's anybody who hasn't been able to join any of the other 3 games, you can join this last one on the screen. Syme is at the top there. I hope I'm saying your name right. Chidima's at the top second there. Ashu is third. A is fourth and Log is fifth. Galactic is at the top there. F1 is third. Jaj is fourth. Elki is fifth. You guys need to come up with better names. I can't say these. Lena is at the top here. Jude's grandmother is second. Shush is third. V is fourth. And Will is fifth. Oh, that's not you, Chidima. Oh, who is that then? Well, whoever the imposter Chidima is at the top now. Don't worry, you don't need to donate to me. That's okay. Your grades will be sufficient for me to be happy. Clayton, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, this game's almost filling up. Okay, now it's full. So there's 20 people there. So I think that's probably the max anyway. You can join this last game if you're unable to. Hello, Remy. If they're asking about like how long you should spend on each question in the Kahoot, that's obviously variable. It depends. And so it's going to be different, I guess, for whatever strategy. Should you do the paper chronologically or do the first one first? I would say yeah, do it actually no, I would always do section B first. I would always do the highest marker first and then do chronological section A. That's what worked for me because I was like doing the toughest thing first and then move on. But it's up to you. How was my half term? I mean, I don't have a half term. I don't go to school anymore, so I know your half term was just about revision, so Wow, there's almost 100 people on here. We're just doing Cahoots. You can join the one that's on the screen now. Here's the link. You guys are always asking questions about me. You're like very inquisitive, aren't you? I'm surprised you actually care. Well, you're probably just curious, which is fair enough. I'm going to make the document available. Chidima, what should I tell them to stop doing? I don't see what they're doing. What are they doing? Harassing you? Everybody stop harassing each other. I'll say that and then people start doing it even more. Remove every fake Jude. How do I know which one's fake and which one's not fake? The article, the speech, or the letter, whatever you get, it'll be 40 marks. I love being in the lives as well, Yumna. I'm glad you'd love it. I think it makes your GCSE period a bit more fun. Imagine if you were just sitting by yourself revising instead of playing these Cahoots. It's like the Cahoots are a reward for sitting an hour and waiting with me. Remove the fake Chidimas. That's probably enough Cahoots to be fair, so we'll leave those games in. I do multiple Cahoots because each Kahoot only allows for 20 people. JAJ is at the top of this game. Well done. Imposter Chidima's at the top here. Shush is at the top here with Jude. I think that's the real Jude, but I'm not sure. Second, Strawberry third. WT Sigma there. You know Miles second. Brev third. H is at the top there. Okay. Chidima's like, who's my imposter? Reveal yourself. Noah for GCSE second place. Come on, get to the top. Be the best as we always are. Shush is winning that game there. Now I don't know who is in imposter, who is not. Imposter Chidima is there. JAJ is still at the top there. Jude is turning into something else on the chat. This is not the Jude I know. I think someone's hacked into his computer because of what's going on. Jude, do not say that. I will remove you as mod. Yeah, this isn't the Jude we know. Come back. Be your normal self. Okay, thank you for apologizing. See, Jude always apologizes. That's the Jude we know. Okay. Demote him. More like demod him. But of course, I would never do that. I feel like everyone's going to have chances to regain. Well, we're on like the last questions now. It's almost done, guys. Winnie, don't give up. You can still do amazing. Last question for two of you. Oh, we got the podium. So, third place, you have Chid. I don't know if that's a real one. I don't know if that's a fake one. Second place, you have JAJ. And at the top, I'm not even going to say. And fourth, Zed. Fifth, Layla. Well done to you guys and well done to everybody playing that game. We've got the podium here as well. So third place, Claire. Second place, A. And first place, Imposter Chidima. So the actual Chidima was third place, and then this is the fake one. And then four, you've got Ashu, and fifth, Sime. Well done to you guys, and well done to everybody playing in that game. The other games have a bit more to go. So do you want me, for the remaining people who've just finished those two games, do you want me to do a non-academic related Kahoot, or do you want to do another one? How many quotes do you want to write in the 6 questions? Well, there's not going to be a number of quotes, but it's just third place, Big Killy. Second place, Jude. I don't know if that's a real one or not. And first place, Shush. Fourth is Strawberry, and fifth is Eloise. I forgot what I was talking about, but yeah, how many quotes? Yeah, there's not a set number of quotes. It obviously depends. But if you're doing a paragraph, don't just try and use one quote. Try and add cumulative evidence to build up on them. Have multiple quotes. Okay, so what would you guys like to do for the individuals? A non-academic. Dylan really wants to do a Kahoot that is non-academic. We'll do non-academic, and if you want to continue revising, you're feeling productive, I encourage you to, and maybe you can exit the live, but we'll do a non-academic Kahoot. What should we do it on? I think food is always the best topic. Or music. Actually, no, but music always will get me copyrighted, so we'll do food. Yep, of course I'll be making it a live tomorrow. Animals? You guys want to do one on animals? Okay. We'll definitely do a celebration live after exams and on results day. 100% we will. Because then you guys can share your results. Um, can I skydive on the last exam day? Okay, wait, this Kahoot has finished. So third place, you've got V. Second place, you have no waffle GCSE. Okay, well done. And top, you have Miles. Fourth in Cred and fifth KY. And well done to everybody else playing that. We just have one more Kahoot that's occurring. Do you remember when somebody was trying to pretend to be that poet? What was his name? Oh my god, in our English live. That was so funny. Guys, I can't find a good Kahoot on animals. Simon Armitage, that was the poet, yeah. Pick a random one. Okay, I'll pick a random one. Well done, Clayton. Can what be on a red carpet? I don't know what you mean. Uh, bear with me, everyone. Okay, we're gonna do a Disney live. There is the link. You don't watch movies. Oh my gosh. Well, you're gonna learn it. So you're gonna learn about movies. Okay, that game's getting full up, so you can join this second game if you are unable to join the first. Okay, everybody got that question correct, and Ashu is at the top. Clayton's nan is second. Smash Chinema, I'm getting rid of you. Please give respectful names, otherwise you'll be kicked out. Nurin is at the top there. Well done. I have Chinema, I have. Do countries. You guys want to do countries? I thought Disney was fun. Nurin is still at the top. Layla is second. Why did someone call themselves Prince Andrew? Oh, okay. We'll stop that game. We'll do countries after. No. Oh. Last question for the people still on the English Kahoot. And if you want to do a countries Kahoot, I'll put the code up now and then you can join that if you want. Okay, and the results for the English language final live. Third place, Sigma. Second place, Ligma, and first place are, with fourth being E Smile and fifth being Sign. Well done to you guys. You can join the Kahoot that is on the screen now, which is about countries, or if you want to do the Disney one, you can do that as well. I'll share the link to this Kahoot. We'll stop in, let's say, at 8:40, since this is just non-related Kahoots anyway. Nurin is still at the top there. Let's see if anyone can beat her. And we've got a countries one for those of you who don't want to do anything else. Okay, this game is pretty much full up, so if you wanted to join the other countries game, you can join the Kahoot on screen now. Otherwise, that one is going to start. Noah for GCSE is second again. Come on, you can make it to first. Pain au chocolat is at the top. Pulse is second, and Oscar Loves Waffle is third. Okay. If you want to join the country one, you can join the link that I've just posted on the chat. Nurin is still at the top there. Dillo is second. V is third. And Layla is fourth. No, GCSE at the top. Well done. Nurin is on the streak of 15. She knows her Disney. No, for GCSE still at the top there. Still got 10 more spaces on the country's Kahoot, or 8 more now, if anybody still wants to join that. Otherwise, I'll start that game in like a minute. Well, I guess we're going to end the game soon, so I'll probably start that game now then. Okay, the results for the first Disney Kahoot. Third place, you have V, well done. Second place, you have Dillo. And first place, Nurin, well done. You deserved it. You went through all of them. You clearly are a good Disney fan. Fourth is Freaky, and fifth is Cold. This game's almost finishing as well. Last minute, guys. Try and answer as many questions as fast as you can. Be at the top of the leaderboards. Just a little bit of fun. Whoever called that last character Pocahontas, guys. Okay. Podium, third place. Elkie, well done. Second place. And first place, Noah for GCSE. We're at the top, guys. Well done. Fourth is Natasha, and fifth is Lowe's. Well done to everybody playing that. And I'm going to end the other ones as well. For the country's first game, YTY is first. Second is Oscar Love Waffle. And first is Hello. Okay. Well done. And fourth is Nurin. And fifth is Mahim. Well done to you guys. Vinitha. I hope I'm saying your name right. Or Vinita, however you say your name. Thank you. Amazing job. You came first, making the name proud. And then I'm just going to end this game here. For the countries, third place, I Love No Waffle. Second place, Chidima, probably an imposter again. And first place, Leo Messi. Fourth is Hi, and fifth is Eliza. Well done to you guys. Okay, so that is the end of the lives and all of the fun that we've been having. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found the walkthroughs helpful. We have covered over this live and the previous English language live, we've covered all of the questions. So if you need any guides for that, you can just access them. Let me upload the document onto my website, and then I'll post it in the chat. So if you wanted a quick review of what I was writing, you can use that. So give me a second. Yeah, I'm going to post it on my website and I'll link it in the chat. You can also find on the website the English question 2 and 3 practices. And I'm just uploading the question 3 and 4 and 5 practices. So look, you have a plethora of resources. Thank you, Clayton. Okay. Thank you, guys. Waffles. You want to call yourself Waffles? I think I did initially call you guys Waffles, but I eventually stopped because I kind of realized how odd that was. But thank you, Remy. I appreciate that. But before you go, I don't know if you wanted access to the document. So I've uploaded it on my website now. You can access it here, but I'll also share my screen. So you can see on the English language resources, and it's quite messy, but you've got the paper 1 resources, the first 2, and then paper 2, you've got the question 3 and 2 practices. So you can use that if you want. All free. Okay, guys, well done. You worked really hard. I will see you in the biology live tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Thank you for answering in the chat. And yeah, good luck.